Welcome to Easily Entertained, a show dedicated to appreciating all the best parts of entertainment. My name's Bryson Olson, and I'm a filmmaker and a lover of all forms of storytelling. Here I will bring you along as we critique and analyze stories with a more positive take on why we enjoy them, and bring a new appreciation to the world of entertainment. Welcome back to Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson Olson, here to talk about things entertainment. Today we are going to be talking about the new Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Was absolutely a great time. I have loved the legendary Godzilla series. It's just so much fun. The Monsterverse, it's always a great time. It's just kaiju fights that are so much fun. You're not really looking for anything special. It is great. And that's something we'll be talking about today. The kind of fun kaiju fight type aspect of the Monsterverse. It's always a great time. Sadly, with more humbling human story this time around. And then, of course, rounding it off with just the fun, talking about the fun kaijus that are featured in this movie, because it's always a great time. And I it's kind of like a special, not even a special moment, but almost like a special feeling for me to watch Godzilla x Kong, just because. So 3 years ago, when Godzilla vs. Kong came out, that was at the end of my first year of college. And now, 3 years later, we are at the end of my last year in college watching Godzilla x Kong. So it's kind of fun that, spring of both years, we've had a Godzilla Kong movie, and I feel great. It's fun, and as someone who's wanting to enter like the film industry, it gives me a lot of hope that we can still just make fun movies, and not everything has to be the most serious film you've ever seen. We can have the fun stuff, and that's something I really like. So let's talk about that. Godzilla x Kong is so much fun. As long as you know what you're going into. If you're going into kaiju film I say this, and of course Godzilla -1 came out earlier this year, which is probably, that doesn't really support my case, because that one is very meaningful. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's very much similar to the original Godzilla, where it is about, nuclear destruction and what we could potentially do and harm. And it's like a representation of why those things are so bad. And then there's the other side of things where it's more fun, where it's like just monsters fighting each other. And some in these ones, it's more about like they try and push the environmentalism aspect of it, while saying like nature could go out of balance. So instead of talking more about the nuclear side of things, they talk more about the environmentalism side of things, where things can go really wrong and upset the balance by human interaction. And that was mainly the case with Godzilla vs. Kong. In this one, it's more focused on the Titans, which I kind of enjoy, because I think the best part about these movies is the kaijus, and we'll talk more about the kaiju specifically later. But in this one, it's that focus. It's embracing the fun. It's the fun, big kaiju fights, and just mindless action constantly. Like, it's not even. So Godzilla vs. Kong did this as well, where they kind of just throw you into the action. Like, Godzilla's rampaging through some town because, they're building something that he doesn't really like. And this one is very similar. Godzilla's kind of just rampaging, killing other kaijus, and absorbing their radioactive energy to prepare for something. You don't know what it is. Well, you kind of do because of the trailers, but you don't really know. And it's just mindless action. And that I kind of enjoy, just because like it's not anything special. You know what you're getting into. You're like, I'm just going to go watch a bunch of giant monsters beat each other up, and this is going to be a good time. And I love that we have an opportunity for movies to be like that. Because you can have movies that are fun, but also have like a huge story behind them. And it's like, they're fun, but they have a giant meaning behind them. It's like, oh, the dangers of nuclear war, or, you know, humans are going to go too far and will upset the balance of the earth and we're all going to die. And, you know, the Godzilla movies, like the MonsterVerse, kind of pushes that a little bit, but also tries to treat them more as just like, these are aspects of nature and we have to let them do what nature does. And that's like the line in King of the Monsters where Sarah's out. Oh, maybe it's the first Godzilla. It might be first Godzilla, where he's like, let them fight. And that kind of like envelops the entire franchise, where they're like, yes, this is going to be great. And some people are not huge fans of this. So particularly in this movie, and I think, although I enjoy it, I do think some of the weight of these giant creatures is not felt. They seem to move a bit too fast because, you know, like, they're giant. And from the most part, we are viewing things from a human perspective. And so they make them slower on purpose because they're huge and they have to move their bodies a lot. In this one, it's almost like they take the Titans' perspective and make them faster, as if like how they would be seeing it. But what ends up being perceived, because you get both perspectives, and then it feels weird, because then at some points, like, they're kind of slow, and some points they're like crazy fast. Like Godzilla runs so fast and he jumps, which is crazy. They're like, at the beginning of the film, he's taking down this like spider-like creature. I don't know the kaiju's name. He runs at it and he jumps. It's not like a little hop, like he's barely jumping over anything. He jumps like almost the height of a building, which is so crazy. And if Godzilla were real, that would scare the crap out of me, because just this massive creature, probably like thousands of tons, jumping is so wild. It's like a building. And some people don't really like that. And I personally, I don't mind it. However, I just think like they need to be consistent on the perspectives they're giving. Are you going to make them slow and massive, or are you going to make them fast and massive? I'm fine with either. Just pick one, because they just tend to combine it a lot. And that I find a little bit confusing sometimes, but for the most part, it's just fun seeing these giant creatures just start wrestling and beating each other, and I love it. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we get into the kaiju craziness. But before that, let's talk about the human story, because that's always an aspect of these movies, is that you have to have a human story to ground it out a little bit, at least. The human story in this one, maybe not as grounded, but it's still kind of fun, just because they kind of cover how the Titans, it's like Godzilla was the protector of nature, and the great apes, like Kong, were the defenders of humanity. However, there's one great ape who kind of tries to take a lot of control. And so in this one, it's like they're trying to save humanity because a new ice age could be coming because of one of the kaijus. And they have to, connect with a native people, the Iwi tribe of Hollow Earth, and bring about a prophecy of bringing Mothra back and saving everybody. And it's not like that's necessarily a bad story, but it's pretty like predictable and simple. You just have people who are like, okay, let's go down into Hollow Earth. Let's find this stuff, and then we'll bring out Mothra. And that's pretty much it. That's what the humans have to do in this one. And maybe I'm not saying Godzilla versus Kong is the greatest movie ever, but I think their human story does a little bit better, just because, there's like villain humans which are building Mecha Godzilla, and then there are humans who are watching after Kong to fix everything. Whereas the humans in this one, like, they're there for Kong and to like support him, but Kong actually goes off and does his own thing like 75% of the time. Like, he faces Scar King and he does his little ape journey, and the humans kind of just come in when they're needed. And it's fine that they do that, but it's almost kind of lackluster just because they're like, I don't know what we do with them. Just throw them in, I guess. And so that is like, it's something about like kaiju movies that I think it's good that we have the humans to like kind of ground the story and bring our perspectives into it. But at the same time, you're almost like, we could just take out the humans, have just the monsters, and maybe the movie would be slightly better. In this one, like, so a lot of the focus is on Kong, and, he befriends like a very young ape, which is like almost like baby Kong. And, the apes almost kind of talk to each other, and he's like freeing a bunch of other apes from slavery. That's such a wild sentence for me to say. And it's just like, it's more focused on Kong. And the humans are like just a side plot. And they've kind of been a side plot for most of the other movies, but mostly the focus is on the humans. And then we get the kaiju fights. In this one, it is mainly the kaiju fights and then some of the humans, which I don't mind because I think the kaiju fights are fun. But it does like make me think, like, why are the humans even here? Like, we could have a very similar story if the humans were just cut out entirely. Like, it wouldn't affect that much. The only thing it would affect is like they need to help bring Mothra back. But like, if you were really thinking about it, you could probably find some other way to bring Mothra back. So there's that aspect to it. So it's kind of like the humans kind of need to be there, but it's more of like a humbling kind of story where it's like, humans, you don't really do anything. Like, you need to help, but also like the Titans are going to handle everything anyways. Like, Godzilla and Kong are going to team up and beat the crap out of some other kaijus. So why? Like, do you like, obviously you have like the gauntlet for Kong, but I don't know, maybe that's it. It's kind of about it. And so that aspect, I'm kind of just like, okay, we could maybe get rid of this, or this could be built up a little better and be similar formula. And granted, I don't want things to be completely formulaic, but it could be a more similar aspect to the other ones where there's a big human story and they have to get the Titans involved to fix the problem. And, maybe that would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But who knows? And anyways, let's talk about probably the best part of all of these movies, and that's the kaijus. That's the big Titan creatures that fight each other and are just so much fun. I love it. And there are there are quite a few kaijus in this movie. However, I'm mainly just going to talk about 5 because those are the ones I know the names of. And so those are the ones I'll focus on. Something I love about these movies is that, I talked about this in the last episode, that I am a huge fan of practical effects. And I think they blend really nicely. These movies, practical effects, as we've seen with a lot of old Godzilla and Kong movies, those look cheesy. This is a situation where CGI, I think, beats phenomenally practical, because you can make creatures hundreds of feet tall, give them as much detail as we need, and they kind of fit the world. I think this is a situation where these movies, like the CGI, it works, where they kind of fit the world and it doesn't really take you out of place. I think CGI is mainly bad or like more noticeable when it's humans and something that we see like every day, because then you're like, that's not what that looks like. I see that all the time. Whereas Titans, they're like obviously very special creatures that you're not going to see all the time, and so they have more liberties to like do whatever they want and then make them look more realistic. Like something I have kind of loved about like Godzilla's evolution over the movies is he looks like he belongs in the world. Like they make his skin look like tree bark, and like obviously his physics are not always correct, but he seems as if he could exist in the real world. Kong as well, and I like his progression over the franchise. Just like he gets a bit more muscly, and you know it kind of makes sense for Kong, especially because like as he's getting bigger, he needs to have more muscle to kind of support his weight. Like a lot of people, they're like, well, a creature that big could not be sustained. Who cares? Okay, physics are thrown out the window. Let's just have fun. Because something I notice a lot with, so like the older ones, like the original Godzilla movies, he's very humanoid, and he's still like a bipedal creature in the MonsterVerse, but he looks like an animal. He looks like a crocodile or a lizard. He looks like a creature and not like a person. And granted, you know, they were limited by their time, but also like more recently with Godzilla -1, he partially looks like a creature, but his main build seems more humanoid, and that like can kind of take you out of it a bit more, because you're like, okay, that is like based more on like a human type design, whereas Godzilla in the MonsterVerse does seem like a creature. He feels like he could have evolved somehow in the Earth's progression naturally. So he looks like an actual animal. And same with Kong. Like, granted, apes already kind of are more humanoid, but he looks as if like you took a silverback gorilla and you just evolutionized him over millions of years into this more upright humanoid creature. And it kind of seems a lot more natural, and that I enjoy. With the other ape in the film, he looks good. I like Scar King. I think his design is interesting. He's like very lanky. He's way different than Kong. And Kong, he's like the beefiest ape of them all. He is the biggest. It's like no doubt that Kong's going to win. And Scar King, he's a lot more lanky. He's skinny. He's a bit smaller. And so he has to kind of rely on like sense a bit more, but like Kong is super smart too. And as a result, like Scar King like looks like a variation of Kong, but not at the same time. Like he looks almost out of place. Like not exactly, but a little bit. He doesn't fit as much. And I noticed this as well with, I believe it's Shimo, is the ice lizard thing. That one does not feel as grounded as Godzilla's design is. And maybe it's just because like, so the creature, so Shimo is like an ice spitting type, almost dragon-like creature. It can't fly, but it's like similar to Godzilla, but instead of, you know, breathing out nuclear radiation, it does it with ice. However, because of it, its color scheme, it's like blue crystals and white skin. And something I notice with movie designs, in like CGI, like creature designs, if the creature is white, it tends to like not fit the world, like ever. And I noticed that with Shimo a lot. Like it does not seem to pair up with the world like Godzilla and Kong do. And Scar King like kind of matches a little bit more, but it's like almost a middle ground. But Shimo, I think, doesn't, like, it seems more out of place when you see Shimo because like it's white, and white is a very like, it's obviously a very rare color in nature because it's like albino. And they don't really like say that like she's meant to be albino, but Shimo is just like a white creature. And they always seem like kind of out of place. And like naturally white skin or scales reacts to light very specifically. And so when you're trying to artificially do that, it looks a bit off, at least to me, is just something like it kind of took me out a little bit. I was like, oh, Shimo looks a bit weird in natural light. And like when they're in like the cave, it's not as bad. But I do think like when there's a lot more light around, Shimo does not look as good as the other kaijus. I do think that Mothra is kind of fun. I like the design that Mothra has, where it's kind of like a mix of a bee and a butterfly, because like butterflies do not really have like, at least from what I know, maybe I need to look at butterflies more closely, they don't really have like the mandibles that like bees or other type creatures have. It's almost like a wasp a bit more, but maybe moths don't. Maybe moths have them. I have no idea. I thought they just have the long proboscis thing. But I like Mothra's design just because she like is meant to be like more of a protector, but also she can still defend herself. Like I thought it was interesting in King of the Monsters when she had a stinger rather than just like a normal abdomen. And that I found interesting. And I really like Mothra's design. I think just as it has evolved throughout the years, just because like before it like was obviously a very simple giant butterfly in the original movies, whereas now it's like almost like it's that hyper realistic mix of a moth and a bee sort of looking thing. And I find it interesting and I really like it. It's just a cool design. But yeah, that's kind of like the fun part about these kind of big monster movies, is that they kind of have the liberty to try new things. You can get a bit more risky with your designs. Even if you're making them more realistic, you can get a bit riskier. You can try and push it a bit more. And of course, that's like the main appeal of these movies, is that they have these giant monsters that are going to be fighting each other. Why not make it interesting and make them all look different? And that I find really fun. And I think it's why Godzilla X Kong can really leave you easily entertained. So thank you for listening to this episode of Easily Entertained. I hope you enjoyed it. Before we go, let's talk about our rating for Godzilla X Kong. I think it's going to be a very similar rating to last week's episode of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which if you haven't seen, you should go watch that one too. It's a good episode. At least I'm a little biased, but I'd say it's a good episode. But so our rating scale, if you are not familiar, our rating scale on Easily Entertained goes like this. From least to worst, it is garbage, once is fine, the right mood, quotable, go to, and all day, every day. I think I did a bit more than I really said. And I would put Godzilla X Kong probably at right mood. It's very much that middle of the ground type of movie where I think Godzilla versus Kong was a bit better and a lot more fun. Well, I think this one was fun, but like it's just more memorable, and I can see myself going back to watch Godzilla versus Kong like on its own a lot more. Whereas this one, I'm like, maybe I'd watch this in tandem with the other ones, and that kind of puts it at a right mood for me. And I can't really think of any major quotes, and so I can't really put that one in quotable. So I think we're putting Godzilla X Kong at right mood. Be sure to let us know your rating of Godzilla X Kong as well. And then question of the week time. This relates a bit more to Godzilla versus Kong rather than Godzilla X Kong, but it's still a fun question. It gets you invested in the discussion. It is Team Godzilla or Team Kong. And that's such a hard decision, I would say. I think most people want to go Team Kong just because he's more like personable. And, you could probably connect with Kong. He has tools. He's really smart. He kind of figure his way around things. And I would probably say I'm mostly Team Kong. But to Team Godzilla, yeah, you're probably winning like 90% of the time without any help or tools. Kong is going to lose because Godzilla is huge and he's very strong. He's not really vulnerable to a lot of things because like his skin is really thick. He has his atomic breath. So, Godzilla's probably going to win, but it's fun to root for Team Kong. And, I was rooting for Kong when I watched Godzilla versus Kong. So, just saying. Let us know your response to the question of the week. Team Godzilla or Team Kong? Let us know in the comments on YouTube, over on Spotify, Instagram, wherever. And speaking of Instagram, go follow our Instagram and our TikTok. Hit the bell icon on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify so you can get notified of all the latest episodes. And if you're on the social media sites, you can get extra things like initial thoughts, where we, react to trailers or give our first thoughts on movies right after we see them, before the full reviews. And it's always a good time. But with that, I will leave you guys to go have fun. Go watch some of our old episodes if you haven't yet. And we'll see you next week. Bye. You have been easily entertained.